University has always been a place to teach you how to think, not to teach you what to think. It's those basic techniques in critical thinking, in effective oral and written communication. They're the things that are going to survive through several different career changes.
Hello and welcome to this very special conversation with a very special guest all the way from London, Michael Spence. Who is the president of UCL? That's the University College London. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Michael, you head a university. You pretty much run a university which is one of the finest in the world, very coveted. How does the university of the future look like to you?
Well, I think the University of the Future does a lot of the things that the university does now. It contributes to innovation and to the local economy. We had a study done a couple of years ago, and unusually our economists said the study was too conservative, but it said that UCL contributes £9.6 billion to the UK economy every year. That's the economic impact of a London Olympics every year. We've attracted $3.8 billion for investment in our startups over the last 4 or 5 years. So we're a huge driver of economic growth. But at heart, we're also a place that prepares young people for a constantly changing world. And that's the function universities have had for a long time, and I think it's the function that we'll continue to have in the future.
One of the functions of a university is also to promote lifelong learning.
Yes.
How are we advancing that narrative?
Well, lifelong learning is really about teaching you to teach yourself at one level, but also we're thinking about ways in which we make opportunities to return to the university possible at various points in your career as you reskill. But it's those basic techniques in critical thinking, in effective oral and written communication. They're the things that are going to survive through several different career changes. In my last gig at the University of Sydney, we did a global survey of employers in the US, the UK, Australia, India, China, France, Germany, and Italy. And we also did some work in the theoretical literature. And they were pretty consistently of one view that it was those fundamental skills in critical thinking and in problem solving that they think will make people resilient to several career changes.
Are you then indicating that it's no longer about degrees only? It's no longer about the certificates that you get from a university, but it's also about the skills that you have?
I think it's always been about the skills you have. University has always been a place to teach you how to think, not to teach you what to think. But I think that's more true than ever now that you have effectively the whole knowledge of the world on your mobile phone.
So why I said this was with a reason, because if you look at countries like India, the first barrier to a job is a degree. If you don't have a degree, doesn't matter what skills you have, you don't qualify for a job.
Yes.
Should that change?
I think everywhere people have to be looking at what skills you have rather than what pieces of paper you have. But I'd like to think, as someone who runs a university, that the piece of paper does represent some skills.
Okay, so you're suggesting that it should be skill-based?
Yes.
Even if you're giving a degree, give them skills, impart skills as well.
Very much so.
Absolutely. All right, so let me come to another part, which is a very current and contemporary conversation, which is technological disruption.
Sure.
How is that affecting learning?
Well, there are three things really that we need to think about in relation to AI and education. We need to teach our students the things the machines are never going to be able to do, interdisciplinary perspectives, skills in relating to and dealing with people, skills in working in a team. We need to be teaching our students, second, how to use the machines well. When my vice provost research, who is a neuroscientist who works in the artificial intelligence of consciousness, believe it or not. When he asks ChatGPT questions, he gets much smarter answer than when I ask ChatGPT questions. So we need to be teaching them to use the machines, but we also need to be teaching them many of the core skills that the machines actually have. When the calculator came along, we didn't give up teaching arithmetic because we thought they were key intellectual skills. Not least, you needed to know whether or not what was coming out of the calculator made any sense. And so universities are thinking in those three ways about how they repackage education. But we're also looking at how we can use artificial intelligence as a tool for teaching itself, how we can deliver teaching more effectively through using artificial intelligence.
One of the core areas of work of a university is also to research.
Yes.
And there is a lot of discussion about universities being, at least the conversation is pretty ripe in India, that universities need to look at skilling, given that the government is giving this huge push towards skilling, that universities need to think like a polytechnic, not just as a university. Where does research figure in this?
So research has got to be crucial. The difference between a university and a school is that a school transmits skills and information. A university creates skills and information and transmits it. And our contribution across science and research is enormous. My favorite of our recent startups, Roctavian, people who have hemophilia A, one injection, they never need a blood transfusion. And these are people who've had blood transfusion sometimes every week or month of their life. We have research at the frontiers of gene and cell therapy. We have research that's bringing new hope to cancer patients. This fundamental research needs to take place in universities, and then the ideas can be developed in industry, but the high risk stuff at the real frontiers of our understanding, that needs to take place in a university.
Again, a very current and contemporary conversation is about global collaboration.
Yes.
How can universities collaborate to create collective knowledge which will benefit humanity at large?
So my researchers are looking for the cleverest people to work with wherever they might be in the world, and people with particular skill sets. And so we do have collaborations across the world, and particularly here in India. To give you a good example of a recent agreement that we've signed that I think is very exciting, we have a long tradition of working with IIT Delhi in technical areas, and in particular in areas such as artificial intelligence, where we have a real strength. We have a long tradition of working with AIMS in medical sciences. But increasingly, the interesting stuff, and the area where we got 2 Nobel Prizes earlier this year, the interesting thing is happening at the intersection of technology and medical practice and clinical practice. And so we've signed a trilateral agreement with AIMS and IIT Delhi to work on a number of projects in areas that bring technological skill and medical skill together.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose part of what we'd like to think that we add to that is every research area has its own culture, and AIMS is very much in the medical culture, and IIT Delhi is very much in the engineering. Well, we do both, and we'd like to think that we help bring those two together. So there's lots of possibilities to collaborate around things you just can't do yourself.
So identify strengths and then come together. Build an ecosystem and think much bigger, better than what you're currently thinking.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Having the intellectual and, the physical and equipment and all the rest of it, resources, and the access to clever students, clever research students that all those different institutions have.
Again, this is something that is a personal question, and I see Gen Z especially.
Yes.
Looking at visual medium as learning, which
Yes.
is not what we experienced when we were students, how does that stack up in terms of learning? And does it really contribute to their growth as individuals intellectually?
We think that some of the old-fashioned skills are skills that Gen Z really needs. And interestingly, Gen Z agrees. So one of the things that's happened after the pandemic is that we've found that students want to get back on campus.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get face-to-face. They want to learn from books as well as from screens. That's been interesting because not everybody predicted that. There was a while when everybody thought all education would go online. Well, our students are telling us, no, there is something really important about the kind of planned, but also the casual interactions that you get on a campus and what can happen when the marvelous learning that can happen.
The human part of it, right?
The human part of it, yes.
Wonderful. Finally, Michael, India is a growing market for every single industry.
Yes.
For the education industry,
yes,
how do you see India as a possibility? Are there plans of setting up something in India?
We don't have any plans to set up a campus in India. Um, and the reason is universities are deeply enculturated institutions. And so when you set up a campus overseas, you're either trying to replicate what you have at home, which is a little artificial because it's in a different cultural context,
Yeah.
or you're running a foreign university for which you don't have the cultural skills. We actually think it's much better for both sides if you partner with really strong local institutions. And so we're putting a lot of effort into building our existing partnerships with Indian institutions and developing new ones, both for research and for student exchange.
All right. And finally, how can universities collectively create a narrative that will help us solve some of the biggest problems that we are facing today, including poverty, including gender inequality? How do we come together and create a knowledge base or create an action plan which translates into action?
So UCL was founded with a number of distinctive characteristics, one of which it was founded for useful knowledge, as our founders put it. And that doesn't mean that we don't do, aspects of shapes in the 37th dimension, the pure theory stuff that everybody else does. But it does mean that we have a very strong tradition of multidisciplinary work as a comprehensive campus, because the problems that you're alluding to don't come in neat disciplinary boxes. And I think universities can do two things. One, they can harvest the intellectual resources of the university as a whole to address those problems. But second, they can create a particular kind of leaders who are skilled in disagreeing, in listening to one another, in collective problem solving. And they're the sorts of skills that we think we need for the future.
Wonderful. On that very positive note, thank you for your presence. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for flying down from London and giving our audience such a wonderful idea of what UCL stands for. We are really blessed.
Well, that's very kind of you, because the privilege has all been mine. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.